Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for watching the videos. I just want to point out that if you want to come and see places where I'm likely to be doing live shows or talks and things, very often I'm asked to promote the events that people have booked me for, and I tend to now put them in the community tab. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to see where I am, then check out the community tab. I think I'm in Glastonbury, I'm in Burnley, I'm in Ledbury in the next few days or weeks. So do check that out if you want to come along. It saves me sort of putting them in the shows that not everybody gets to see, because I know that not everybody watches every single show, and I don't blame you. I do so many. The interviews are the ones that you want to watch because they're very interesting, with fascinating people, of course, with their wonderful stories and indeed their knowledge which they share. But of course I do try to share as much as I can, and you email me in quite regularly, and as you know I get a bit swamped, and I do try to answer as much as I can. And I had an interesting email today, which I thought we would have a little look at and then sort of pontificate afterwards. So let's have a look. This is an email from one of my regular correspondents and says, do you remember when banks used to pay us interest on money in our current accounts that when we were in credit? I do remember that, actually. And the correspondent says, I'm trying to remember when this was phased out. Yes, I can't remember. You know, terms and conditions. The banks seem to always make tons of money out of us. Why they can't keep the interest business going, I don't know. Anyway, this correspondent says, it's just that as the banks use our money to gamble on it on the stock exchange, making themselves millions, nay, billions of pounds, and actually only having to legally hold 10% cash in their physical branches at any one time, we might have to ask the question, where's the rest of the money? Well, that's a very good question. And does it actually even exist? That's the question I would follow that up with. Why aren't we rewarded some interest for authorizing them to use our money for gambling when they have a win? Well, exactly. They're holding our money and making use of it. We should be rewarded for that. We should be charging them. Maybe we should send them an invoice and say, look, you're holding our money, you're using it to with fractional reserves to help other people. Perhaps we should invoice you, not the other way around. Anyway, some may argue that as soon as you deposit your hard-earned money into your bank account, it automatically becomes the bank's property without informed consent and your authority. And that's very true. We've heard this, that when you deposit, you are deposing the money, and it's probably in all the small print and stuff. And that's why it's been awkward for some people to say, well, I'd like to get a couple of grand out in cash, and you get the third degree. I've heard of people saying that they've tried to do that, and when they turn up at the bank to get the money, the police are waiting there to ask them. The police! I mean, isn't that a civil matter between you and the bank? Nothing to do with the police? Where's the crime? A crime hasn't been committed, but oh no, they want to have a word with you. That does seem very strange in my view, especially if it's your money. And I know, oh, well, it's because so many people are scamming. You say, yeah, well, hold on a minute. Are you normalising ordinary people wanting to just extract their money from the bank and go and do stuff in the private with that cash? Anyway, let's carry on. Surely this government would wish to curry favour with the general public by reintroducing interest on accounts to help assist the cost of living. Well, especially as we've seen with the winter fuel payments, if you could be earning a little bit of money by putting your money into the bank and letting them have the use of it, you should be rewarded, and that interest could go, not that it's very much, but it ought to be able to help, with the cost of living. I absolutely take your point. It would also help promote individuals to save their money so as to benefit from this gesture of goodwill on behalf of the banks, instead of mindlessly spending money on disposable and impulse purchases. Well, we are hypnotised, are we not, through mainstream media, through the adverts on... no, hopefully you don't get adverts on my channel, because I've been demonetised, and it would be awful of me to think that YouTube were making money out of it, and I'm not. And I can't see that I'm doing anything terribly nefarious, because if it was that nefarious, they would have kicked me off the channel altogether, wouldn't they? Anyway, people used to save money, and in the old days, I don't know if you were like me, if I didn't have the money, I wouldn't be able to afford it. These days, of course, you've got all these carrots saying buy now, pay later, and people are taking on credit. The sad thing is I used to hear these stories at Christmas time where mothers and mums and dads would say, well, I want to give my kids the best Christmas. They've got to keep up with the Joneses. There's all that peer pressure. And so therefore, I'm going to max out on my credit card to give them the Christmas, despite the fact I've got no money coming in. And then they suffer the problems later on. And if that goes to the point that they're eventually kicked out of the house or they can't afford to feed their children, I'm not sure that that's a particularly good idea. Have we lost our sense of proportion about having what money we've got and being respectful about that and not just sort of trying to get ourselves ever more into credit to spend it on something for the now when we're not necessarily looking towards a better future? I don't know. It's not for me to criticize anybody, by the way, who wants to spend their money and take these carrots in any way they like. They're entitled to do that. That is, of course, their right. And it's not for me to say either way. Let's just finish off this email. Perhaps a shift in attitude by the public to seek out alternative banks, such as Starling, who pay interest, albeit they charge a small fee. Wait a minute, that's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? They're paying interest, and yet they're charging you to do so. Anyway, for investing your hard-earned money with them, just a thought. Well, thank you very much for that, and I appreciate that, and that's it. Very interesting. What I would like to add to that, if that's all right with you, gentle viewer sitting there, smoking your pipes, no doubt now, keeping yourself healthy with the nicotine raging through your body, getting rid of all those awful goodness knows what's that have been jabbed into us or is breathed in through the air or drunk through the water, is that in many ways, I think there are two sort of systems here, are there not? There's the very complex banking system, which is for trading and the stock exchange and those people who seem to have no real skills, i.e., they can't put up shelves or they can't build a wall. They are not trained in anything that you and I could perhaps look at, but they have an ability, let's say, to be able to take their money or somebody else's money on their hand and sort of gamble on the stock market and make a lot of money for themselves and not actually leave their house. Fair enough, if that's a thing, which it is. It just seems to be a very murky world. And in a way, it seems very unfair for those people who are actually building things, creating things, making the world work, plumbing and putting in the electrics in your house and actually doing stuff which is of benefit clearly, visually for everybody, that they somehow are having to work on an hourly rate and not making very much in the great scheme of things, and somebody who is effectively playing with cards on the stock exchange somehow managed to accrue huge amounts of money, and they as I say, they don't really have any great skills. Now people come back and say, well, it's a big skill, this gambling lark, and I'll hold my hands up. I don't really know anything about it, don't understand it, and don't really want to get into that area. Money has never been the big thing, having money. Just having, a big bank account with loads of noughts after it. Unless you're actually doing something philanthropically with that money, I don't understand why people continually want to, keep buying bigger houses, bigger cars, bigger islands, and then get to the point where they actually they can buy anything they want that they think, well, the next thing we need to do is to control population, perhaps depopulate the planet, and we'll be the elite. And actually, really the parasite. Anyway, never mind. So that's one system of banking that is murky and weird, and it's not within my realm, and I don't care about it. The other side of banking, which I think is the much more laudable and simple type of banking that most people adhere to or understand and get, is that you earn your money, however you earn your money, and you put it in the bank, and you assume that the bank are looking after it for you. And in the old days, you've seen the westerns, haven't you, where the bank is actually physically in a stronghold, guarded by people. But when you want to get your money back out, because you don't want to carry it around with you, the bank manager will give it back to you, and away you go. And I don't know quite whether you're paying a fee to have the money looked after for you, or whether the fee is that they get to, do the gambling on the stock exchange or lending bits out to other people, in which the interest business would be quite useful. So in other words, you get something back. We've seen, have we not? I don't know if you've seen that film, The Bank of Dave, in which he wanted to set up a bank because he was a wealthy businessman and people were coming to him for loans. And whilst he could do it in a private capacity, he wanted to help more people out. But he couldn't run a bank, and the whole banking cartel closed in on him. Well, it seems to me that's a very unfair system, and that I would like to see many more banks on the high street, many more banks, but perhaps these are private members' banks, I don't know. We seem to have the same old banks, and they seem to be able to change their terms and conditions. They're lending out money. They're creating money that doesn't exist. They're lending money on mortgages, which is the money that's been made by the person taking out the mortgage with his signature, and they're working in very fraudulent ways. And yet we seem stuck to only use these banks. And then there are various online banks and various things which, to me are always a bit dubious if I can't walk in and see brick and, what do they say? Brick houses, actual physical places that you could, bricks and mortar, that was the word I was looking for. If you can't go in and actually say, right, okay, I feel that there is a sense of security here if I put my money in here. They do say that, of course, Bitcoin is one of the you can be your own bank manager. You can be your own bank with Bitcoin. It's its own currency. And I had a conversation only the other day with somebody saying to me, well, you want to keep looking at Bitcoin because it's likely to be the private money of the future. And that may be. For me, I'm still nervous about it because it's nothing. Again, it's sort of that thing about being created out of nowhere, ones and zeros, albeit on its own blockchain, albeit that it is there's a limited amount of it, but that seems to be, that's fine, but you can still keep cutting it down into smaller and smaller pies. I don't really understand it, and I'm just too old-fashioned. That's the problem with me. I'm too old-fashioned. I want to be able to have an honest, honourable, laudable bank that if I'm paid for something that I've done and it's an exchange of labour, that I can go to a bank and say, look, I don't want to have this money hanging about my house because I've only got simple locks on my house and windows that can be broken and someone could come in and steal it. So I'd like to put my money into your bank, and that the bank would say, yeah, that's absolutely fine. We'll look after it. Now, if you allow us to use your money to lend out to other people, not fractional reserve where we lend out a pretend version of it, but actual money, then we'll pay you a fee to keep the money in the bank. Or if you want us to store your money and not lend it out, the old idea of it goes in a shoebox in the back, in the vault, and that you could have your money back whenever you damn well like, then then you pay the bank a fee. I would like to see a very simple system for people who only want to have a very simple system of banking. Why does it have to be confusing? Why does it have to be in a debt currency? And why is it that the banks can then foreclose on you, shut the doors and say, right, okay, we don't want your money anymore. Thank you very much. We've shut it down. I never quite know when somebody says, oh, the bank shut down my account. Do they say, here's your money that you've got, here's it all back? Or do they just say, tough, because it's all in Bank of England notes and it's all on faith anyway, and the Bank of England notes are not backed by anything, then there's nothing really to give you in the first place? I would love to know the answer to that one. Anyway, can we not have a much more simple, in the new world that we're building, can we not create a new simple way of banking without the feeling that bankers, like lawyers and solicitors and counsellors and the police and governments and MPs are all trying to swindle us? Wouldn't it be nice to have a genuine, honourable, normal, honest way of dealing with things? And if I could spit the words out, it would be so much better. Thank you for watching.